Good morning. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. I'm actually in the air while you see and hear this presentation. I'm flying to Luanda, Angola, to meet the team. Today we're going to talk about our 32-year experience in assisting in the development of pediatric cardiac services in conflict zones. Let me give you a little bit of history. Our first trip was to Zagreb, Croatia in 1993, after the Croatian War of Independence. We made a number of trips to conflict zone areas between 93 and 99, but in 99, a professorship was established at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. In 2001, the Paul Niemer Professorship was fully funded, and I then spent all my time developing pediatric cardiac surgical programs in low and middle income countries. In 2005, we were routinely making more than 12 trips a year, and in the fiscal year of 7 and 8, we actually exceeded 20 trips that year. In 2014, we established a second foundation called the William Novick Global Cardiac Alliance, and in 2016, we marked the 25th anniversary. Excuse me, in 2026. We marked the 25th anniversary of the Paul Niemer Professorship in Pediatric Cardiac Surgery and International Child Health. What does our assistance model look like? So we believe that you should utilize every trip that you have as a teaching experience. You can provide education and training to the local team. Requests for this has come from many different places, all the way from just parents up to the level of the executive branch of of the federal governments. The vice presidents have asked us from time to time. We make a virtual site visit, and then we find that it looks like it's going to be a place we might be able to build a program. Then we will actually travel there to make a in-person site visit. We secure funding once we've decided that this is a place where we think we can help them significantly. We correct any equipment deficits that they may have. And then once all of this is done, the team's first trip is scheduled. We take a full team: surgeons, anesthesiologists, perfusionists, intensivists, scrub nurses, ICU nurses, ICU nurse educator, respiratory therapist, pediatric cardiologists, and biomedical engineers are sort of plus minus depending upon the local human resources. Our trips vary in duration from 2 to 6 weeks, and typically we will perform 3 to 6 trips to that same institution annually. Now, Joe Durante wrote really, I think, quite a comprehensive review paper of how you can look at developing a pediatric cardiac surgical program. And there are several key points here. First, obviously, somebody needs to have the vision that they want to do this. You got to have a skill level. You have to have incentives to want to do it. You need to have the resources to pull this off, and then you need an action plan. If all of those elements are in place, you'll be able to change the situation in an existing program or start a new program. Now, as you look at this slide, you see that there are multiple areas where there are X's, and that's where something is missing. And whenever something is missing, it makes it extremely difficult to develop a program, without the full commitment of all of the things that we mentioned above. Now, there's a very significant element that's missing from this slide, and that is conflict. Conflict is the trump card on the development of services anywhere in the world, and it can completely disrupt your plans. Conflict is the ultimate program disruptor. It's the singular most important issue for us if there's conflict is team safety. Surgery stops. Conflict starts, surgery stops. We take care of the children in the ICU. We make sure that we can try and get them out before our departure, or what we call evacuation. A secure evacuation route has to be predetermined. The time agreed upon has to be agreed by all the combatants who control the areas that you're going to be traveling through. And then an armed security team accompanies our team during the evacuation. And typically this is held with a guaranteed ceasefire in the region. Let me give you a little bit of a timeline of some of the things that have happened to us. In March 24, 1999, we were in Belgrade at the Mother and Child Institute, and we were performing our second arterial switch of the day when NATO bombing started at around 6:15 that evening. We finished the case, got the child to the ICU, and ultimately we were evacuated on Friday morning. I had an opportunity to meet that child right after his 21st birthday when we stopped in Belgrade and traveled to his little village as a side trip on a trip to Iraq. It was a very tearful reunion, quite frankly. And then in 2012, we were working in Benghazi, Libya, and many of you may remember the consulate in Benghazi was burned to the ground. And at the time, Ambassador Stevens was actually there. He died. Our team traveled out 2 weeks before that happened, and we returned 3 weeks after it happened. I can tell you it was a tense situation. The attitude in Benghazi completely changed, and you could sense alternating happiness with our arrival and hostility at the team being there. In 2014, the Libyan civil war started after much political infighting, and it started in Benghazi. Our team was there. We spent 5 days not operating, and because the fighting had started and we followed our rules, we stopped operating, took care of the kids in the ICU. We were in no man's land, and there were missiles and rockets and mortar shells flying over the hospital. And in the evenings, we could sit out on the porch and watch the fire trails of these things. It's a very interesting situation. Then in 2014, we had a program in Iraq for extensive training periods where we were literally in the country for 8 months out of the year. And when the ISIS captured Iraq's second largest city, Mosul, and proceeded to come south, when they reached sort of 15 or 20 miles from the Baghdad airport, the Ministry of Health said it's no longer safe for us to be in the country, and they evacuated us quite briskly, I might add, out through the airport in Basra, even though we had originally flown in to Baghdad. Then in April of 2019, we were in Tripoli. We had programs on both sides of the country, I might add. And we were in Tripoli, and the Libyan National Army under General Haftar had decided that they would take control of the entire country. And they had swept up from the south, which they had controlled, and came to the outskirts of Tripoli while we were there. Our team was operating in Tajura, which is a suburb of Benghazi, of Tripoli. And this is a very famous heart center in all of Libya, the Tajura Heart Center. That's where we were operating, and we could hear explosion of the artillery shells while we were working. it was that close. However, the line held, and we continued to work, believe it or not. And eventually, it just became too intense after days of this. And we were evacuated out through Misrata, which is a city east of Tripoli, and where the airport was actually open because the Tripoli airport was closed. And that was, not a harrowing event, but it was, I think for the team, it was, a little bit disappointing that we couldn't finish. Our overall effort to date from 93 to 2024, we've assisted in 36 countries, more than 60 institutions. We've dropped 8 of those institutions because we made 3 or less trips and decided that it was not possible to build a program there. There were 391 trips made as the International Children's Heart Foundation, and as of the end of 2024, 193 trips as Novick Cardiac Alliance. Total operations at the end of 2024 were 10,700, and we have independent programs developed or improved in 30 different institutions. Those independent programs that we assisted, that have grown because of our assistance, are now operating on over 10,000 children per year. Conflict zone countries that we've operated on, you can see them here. There are a number of them, and we've been involved in conflict in Colombia with bombings, in Pakistan with the ISIS attempt to take over the general headquarters of the army, in Ukraine. What more do I need to say? We still run a program in Ukraine. We make 4 trips annually to Lviv. It's a very intrepid group that makes those trips, and I have to say I'm very proud of them. And then, as many of you know, Congo and Rwanda just settled a conflict that they had up in the northeastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and although our Lubumbashi program is in the south, we were frequently operating on children who had come from that region. Our current sites: Lubumbashi, Democratic Republic of Congo; Lviv, Ukraine; Kigali, Rwanda; Benghazi, Libya; Zliten and Misrata, Libya; Tripoli, Libya; Basra, Iraq; and Tashkent, Uzbekistan. These are the places where we're operating now. All of these places, with the exception of Lviv, are in a state of what we call tense quietness. You know things could erupt, but for the time being, all those sites are quiet. These are conflict zone countries that are, really all over the world, and quite frankly, this is one of the times in our history as a world where the most conflict is actually going on right now, as we all sit here today. Now, despite all this, we think a strong point of developing a program, whether it's a conflict zone or not, is a quality assurance and improvement program which has to be carried on locally. We encourage all of our sites to enroll in the IQIC. We established an in-house electronic database because, believe it or not, a number of these programs are still keeping written surgical log papers, a giant logbook where you write down the operation and who did it and where it was done. So we're shifting people over to electronic databases. We initiate quality improvement and quality assurance conference involving all departments on our trips, establish locally driven clinical and translational research projects. We believe continuing medical education for the nurses in the ICU is critical, so we help them establish that program. We provide quarterly reports to regional and national health ministers, and we establish rotations for medical and nursing students to get to get them involved in a program so that hopefully in the future they will choose to go into pediatric cardiac care of some form. What's the pathway for a successful program? Motivated staff who understand the vision. Progress has to be carefully increased. You do not want to destroy the confidence of the local team. Okay? So you have to be careful in how you shift primary care or principal surgeons over to the local team. Develop a synergistic relationship with the administration, a close relationship with the health ministry. We have tried to establish a charity program in every place that we go so that if regional or federal funding diminishes, they've got a charitable program that can hopefully help them get through these rough times. It's really essential to develop routine funding from the government. One of the problems is that many of the governments that we have dealt with and that many of you have dealt with, they really are not aware of the magnitude of the problem for children with heart disease in their country. And so we try and educate them on this issue. And then it's really important to nurture a positive relationship with the media. People need to know about your program. Awareness needs to spread throughout the country. You will find benefactors and donors, philanthropists within your own country that can help you. So how is a conflict zone path different if you want to develop a successful program? Well, you need to do a security analysis. Local sources are important, like the ministry, hospital administration, physicians, and local media. Expert security analysis occasionally has to be done if there's a question about the information that you're receiving versus what you're seeing in your home country with regard to conflict in that area. You need to assess the team's perspective. How do they feel about going there? You need to establish a red line for team evacuation and establish alternative sites for team departure when you need to get out. Maintain a sense of calm and control if you are engaged in an area where conflict starts. You have to keep your head about you, and you have to have logical thinking on how to get your team safely out of that situation. Why do we operate in conflict zones? Look, we believe that no child should be denied surgery based upon the country or the region that they're born in. That's a basic philosophy of ours. Let me give you a couple examples. We had a VSD with heart failure operated under 3 years of age. What happens to that child? Well, look, they gain life expectancy, okay? There are 19.3 DALYs avoided, and they earn, they help the GNC, the gross national product of the country. Now, that's when you operate on somebody that's 3 years old. People ask us, why do you operate on neonates? It's a very complicated thing to do, during conflict. And so if you operate on that TGA, the life expectancy, bam, you get 54.7 dailies averted. Those kids go to school, okay? They get 7 to 8 years of schooling that typically would not have had. And the extra gross national product per capita, can you believe this? It goes up to $740,000 US over their lifetime. Imagine the contribution that they're making to their own society. Okay. This is, I show this picture sort of at the end of the talk because this is one of our favorite children ever. This little girl got operated on in Benghazi, the arterial switch, at the time of the conflict in 2014, and we love her to death. We have a documentary that was made specifically about our work in conflict zones. The production team followed us to multiple countries where conflicts had occurred or actually briefly on hold. You can view it at the trailer at any of these two sites, and give you an idea of what the documentary is all about. I want to thank you for your time and your attention. We're very fortunate to have never lost a team member. Nobody's ever been injured when we've had multiple evacuations, not only in Serbia, but in Libya and Iraq as well. And so this passion of ours to build programs in areas where the need is great has not diminished, and we're still working there. I've recorded this video for you from Syria. We've been asked to come in the post-conflict in Syria, and I spent 3 days in Idlib, and now spent 2 days in Damascus, and we're going to help here. And this is just another example, I think, of why we believe that it shouldn't matter where a child is born. They should have access to heart surgery. Thank you. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. Good afternoon.